He's going to air it out down the field. Catch and a touchdown.
It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. Here's your host, Nick Costco.
Welcome inside the College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Costco. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu. As always, week 4 of our show, week 6 of college football. Boy, I mean, it's just flying by. I know we had this staggered start to the college football season, but now that the Power Fives are back in action, aside from the Big Ten and the Pac-12, but they're coming. Obviously, the Big Ten is now 2 weeks away. You look at the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 12 all have a lot of action going on, and of course, the Pac-12 joining in November as well. I mean, college football is just so great. You know what's not great? Unfortunately, going 1-4 last week in our pick segment. That's right, folks. You can hear that every week right here at the end of the show when we go from 8 to 9 a.m. So we'll take you up to 9 a.m., of course, this morning. But 5-8-2 on the year. Not a good week. And if you heard me on Rich Quinones' show, Back Your Play, which is Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 4 to 6 p.m. right here on this very station, I told him on Wednesday and during our weekly segment, I had a bad week. It was 1-4. We look at last week. Florida couldn't cover against South Carolina. They won by 14. They were a 17.5-point favorite. I had Auburn plus 6.5 at Georgia because Georgia doesn't know what the heck they're doing with their quarterback situation, and Georgia goes out and kills them because they have a suffocating defense. Oklahoma -7 on the road at Iowa State. Oklahoma lost. Okay, Oklahoma lost. If you think they would finally get a bounce, they would bounce back after that terrible loss to Kansas State? No, it didn't happen. We had Boston College, though, plus 14 at home against North Carolina. They did cover. And we had Baylor at West Virginia. Baylor -3 on the road at West Virginia, and they lost. So it's a bad week, just not a good week of predicting football. And this is why betting is so hard, particularly in a year like this where you have college football. It's just so random because some of these teams get the lines are affected via sometimes these rankings. Teams are ranked much higher than they're supposed to. Like Oklahoma, for instance. I mean, everyone thought Oklahoma was going to be a college football playoff contender this year because, again, it's Lincoln Riley. They have the same offensive system as they did the past couple of years. He led them to the playoff with Baker Mayfield, a transfer quarterback, of course, but also a veteran in college football, Kyler Murray. Transfer as well, but again, he was playing. But he was going to play professional baseball, so this was his last football season at the time before he decided to go to the NFL, and then he had Jalen Hurts last year. So he had the veteran quarterbacks come in. I mean, look, Jalen Hurts came from Alabama, he had the championship experience, and he got him back to the playoff. This year, it's redshirt freshman Spencer Rattler, who looks the part, like a Lincoln. He looks like a Lincoln Riley type of quarterback. He looks like he's going to be really good. He has a cannon for an arm. The kid could throw it 55 yards in the air, for all as we've seen so far. But the problem is he's young. He only got he got some reps in and out last year during blowouts. I mean, he appeared in the playoff game last year against LSU because Oklahoma was getting absolutely dominated. It's like, all right, well, Jalen Hurts is going to the NFL. He's never going to play college football again. Let's give the freshman a little blow here. So there you go. That's how Spencer Rattler got in. But I guess they just weren't ready. Plus, with an unprecedented offseason, these teams are just going to be random, and these rankings are affected. So Oklahoma has these big lines, and people are still expecting, all right, well, they lost to Kansas State. All right, their defense blew that one. They can't possibly lose two in a row because Lincoln Riley has never lost 2 in a row. So, again, this is where we're at with college football. So 5-8-2 on the season. Nick's picks, you can catch that later in the show, of course, every Wednesday at 4:20 on Back Your Play with Rich Quinones right here on AM 1490. So, quick things just before we dive into things throughout the day and what we're going to look ahead to the college football slate. You can follow me on Twitter at NickCosco59, NickKosko59. Follow me on Twitter. Follow our station as well at 1490 SportsBet. That's our official station Twitter handle. So looking ahead today, folks, this is just a bit bizarre because I didn't know what to do with these lines, and we are also going to get some help too as well. Because we're gonna have Eytan Shander join us as well. You can catch him all over the place. His show is broadcasted on our station as well. So he'll be joining us in a little bit. We'll get his thoughts on these lines as well. But I'm looking. This is where it's crazy because I didn't know where to exactly go today with with these lines. Okay, so when I told Rich earlier in the week, I said, all right, let's start in the ACC. Let's try to look at some of these unranked matchups with teams that maybe have struggled a little bit. What are these? I mean, we're going to have big lines. We're going to have pick'ems. And at this point, just to get some money and some wins back, I'm trying to lean towards going towards the pick'em games here. Or at least the games that have some small lines, anything under 3 points, if that's possible. And surprisingly, not only did I get one game like that, I got two games like that. So you're looking ahead, and I won't reveal my pick yet, but we have Duke at Syracuse, right? Duke's a 2.5-point favorite on the road, and they're winless. But they're the 2.5-point road, or they're a 2.5-point road favorite at Syracuse today, despite being winless. And then Texas and Oklahoma, the Red River Showdown, which is at noon today. That's one of the big games of the day. That's one of the two biggest games of the day. Just because it's the Red River Showdown, and also, Texas, they had an upset loss to TCU last week, so it's like, all right, is Texas going to bounce back? And now the Big 12 is wide open, so if Oklahoma wins this game and they both have two losses within the conference, boy, I don't know where to go. What do you do in the Big 12? This game has huge implications just because if Texas wins this game on the road, by the way, they're a 2-point underdog. Oklahoma's the favorite, and you would think Texas is a bit of a better team right now, so where exactly do you go if you're the Big 12? Because right now, within the conference, Oklahoma State, they somehow got all the way back up to number 10. They've been going up and down. They're 3-0, but to me, they're kind of a weak 3-0 right now just because you don't know what their full offensive display has not been out there yet. And then you look at Iowa State, they're ranked number 24 after the win over Oklahoma. They're 2-0 in the conference, but 2-1 overall. And then Kansas State, they upset Oklahoma. They're 2-0 in the conference. And they're 2-0 overall. I mean, they're 2-1 overall, but they have the loss to Arkansas State. So, what are you going to get out of them? They upset Oklahoma, and they beat Texas Tech by 10 points. So, the Big 12, which is random anyway, aside from Oklahoma usually when they're running the conference. I mean, everyone's beating each other right now. So, I don't know what to do with this conference if Oklahoma wins today against Texas. So, that's just one of the big games, and of course we'll look at Florida and Texas A&M. Florida's a 6.5-point road favorite. NC State at Virginia. Virginia is favored by 9.5 at home, and Miami at Clemson. That's the big game tonight, the primetime game. We have two Heisman candidates on display at quarterback: Trevor Lawrence for Clemson, the quarterback, and Derek King for Miami. So that's a hot ACC matchup later tonight. So we'll dive into those, of course, in my pick segment. But I'm looking at, I scroll through these games. Again, the Virginia Tech and North Carolina game kind of intrigues me. The over-under set at 59. North Carolina is a 5-point favorite. You would think at some point it's time for North Carolina to really explode offensively. Again, they beat Syracuse their first game, 31-6. They had a game against Colgate get canceled, and then they just barely squeaked by Boston College last weekend. But North Carolina is still a top 10 team. And again, we had that game last week. We had Boston College plus 14, and North Carolina only won 26-22. So, where's this North Carolina offense? Where is it? Where is Sam Howell when you need him? This guy was a hot freshman quarterback last year, and you're thinking, okay, he's probably going to be in the Heisman conversation next year. And again, it seems like everybody's in the Heisman conversation a year after they have a big year, and then it's like a list of about 20 players, and then of course it gets cut down to about 6 once you're a couple weeks into the season. Realistically, then you'll have a couple guys come out of nowhere. But Howell, he's completing 65% of his passes, not bad. Sometimes in college, that completion percentage usually should be up because of the offenses are tailor made for these quarterbacks. But he's had 520 yards through 2 games, 65% completion percentage. He's got 3 touchdowns, but he has 3 picks. So we're even on that ratio right there. It's a high quarterback rating, but he's not playing to where you thought he was going to be playing. At this point through 2 games, you figured, okay, Syracuse and Boston College. He'll probably have maybe 7-8 touchdowns, maybe 1 interception, and the completion percentage is pushing towards 70. It's not there. So that over-under 59 is interesting because Virginia Tech is maybe a little bit better than advertised, but again, the Big Ten and Pac-12 are ranked right now within the polls, but only, got teams like Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State, off the top of my head, that are highly ranked, just because, even though they haven't played any games yet. Virginia Tech is, pushing 40 points a game right now. They beat NC State 45-24 and Duke 38-31. So The defense, not totally there for Virginia Tech. So if there's a time for North Carolina to start pouring on the points, it could be this one. So that over-under play might not be bad for you guys today. I would say lean towards the over in that one. Maybe you're expecting around a 35-30 type of game, 35-28, and that would hit your over today at noon. So that's an interesting one to look out for today. We mentioned the Red River Showdown. Here's a big game in the SEC that I have to mention, and that's Tennessee at Georgia, because last week Georgia showed us that defense is for real, and apparently they have a quarterback as of now. And again, we talked about this last week, where what was Georgia going to do with that quarterback situation? We said JT Daniels, right? The transfer from USC. Now, I thought he would eventually be the starter, especially after Jamie Newman decided to opt out. But he wasn't medically cleared, so DeJuan Mathis started the first game. Stetson Bennett came in relief, and he led the victory over led Georgia to victory over Arkansas, because they were down 7-6. They ended up winning 37-10. And then last week against Auburn, we're figuring, okay, they don't know what they're doing at quarterback. Fine, Auburn has a quarterback, and here's the problem: Bo Nix for Auburn. I mean, what happened to Bo Nix this year so far? Chad Morris is the new offensive coordinator for the Auburn Tigers. Gus Malzahn brought him in, and it's not working right now. At the moment, at least right now, it's not working. Nix was 21 of 40, 177 yards, and an interception. Stetson Bennett for Georgia, meanwhile, against Auburn, 17 of 28, 240 yards, and a touchdown. So nothing too earth-shattering, but Georgia could put up 27 points, and they could still win these ball games, because we know in college football today, there's a lot of shootouts. You need to score a lot. And it seems like the SEC is going towards that route as well, because you see the evolution of Alabama's offense, even with Mac Jones. Steve Sarkisian is not afraid to just air it out all day. He's not going to go Mike Leach air raid on you. But again, by the way, speaking of Mike Leach, Mississippi State, they lost, but they have that's their offense. It's predicated on scoring a lot of points. Florida this year, with a Heisman contender quarterback in Kyle Trask, and probably a Heisman candidate in tight end Kyle Pitts. These offenses are scoring in bunches. So if you're Georgia, you have a great defense, but can you slow down everybody? And I know Auburn went into that game number 7 in the country, and Georgia was number 4. Now they're 3, and Auburn's dropped down a little bit. But you look at what they were doing on defense. Can they do that to everybody? That's my question. Tennessee, I feel like they could do it against Tennessee. Tennessee is I shouldn't say a surprising 2-0, but they've beaten South Carolina, Missouri, and they're ranked number 14 in the country. Now, that to me is a little, is that a little premature? Probably, because I look at their running back, Ty Chandler, and they have Eric Gray as well. Their offense runs through the run game. And I know Tennessee, they score, 31 and 35 points. I mean, they're averaging over 30 points a game. That's great, but they run through the offense, through the run game. Georgia is historically a better run defense than a pass. I mean, they're a great defense right now, but they're better off as a run defense. So I'm looking at Tennessee squeaking by South Carolina, 31-27, and then they beat Missouri by 23. I mean, Alabama beat them up too. So I feel like Tennessee's number 14 ranking is just a little premature. And again, this goes back to my earlier discussion about the lines. These lines are affected sometimes by these rankings. Georgia's a 12.5-point favorite at home over a top 15 team. If Tennessee was realistically, in the 20s, or if they weren't ranked, I would say most years, based on that schedule, I can't see how Tennessee would be ranked. I don't get it. And I'm going back to their first game. The first game in South Carolina, they were already ranked 16th in the country. Now, this has something to do with, of course, there's not everybody is playing at once, so they got slotted in. They didn't lose any games yet, and the SEC started at the end of September. They've only played 2 games. Some ACC teams have already played 4 games, as well as the Big 12. The Big 12 is 3-4 games in. I believe only 3. I believe only 3 actually for the Big 12. That's my fault there. But still, you look at. Again, that ranking just seems so premature to me, and I'm looking at their quarterback as well, Garantano. Again, he's been around. He's been around the program for a while, and a guy like Sam Howell from North Carolina, you think it'd be a little bit better. I know it's more of a run-based offense because they have two very talented running backs. But 449 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, which is good. But his completion percentage is only 61%. You mean to tell me a guy like Garantano is going to be able to beat that Georgia defense on the road? This is in Athens, folks. So to me, that line should be bigger. So am I kind of telling you to go to Georgia or go to Tennessee to cover? I don't know. I feel like now that it's 12.5, Georgia could probably cover this one and win by 2 touchdowns. If that line was bigger, I would take Tennessee, but I think the fact they are ranked within the top 15, that's affecting their line right now, and the fact they've averaged, they're averaging over 30 points a game. So those are some of my intriguing matchups. Down the line, tonight, obviously we'll talk Miami, Clemson as well. Alabama staying on Ole Miss. I mean, Alabama's a 23.5 point favorite on the road at Ole Miss. That just goes to show you the lack of respect for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss right now going against Bama, because again, Saban always destroys his former assistants. I mean, he didn't destroy Kirby Smart in the national championship game a couple years ago, but again, he beats him. He beats him all the time, and I'd be shocked if Lane Kiffin could pull off an upset over Alabama. I mean, let alone cover. So 23.5, that's a huge line. That's something that I usually stay away from, and I'm going to stay away from today as well. Where else we got going on? Yeah, Florida State at Notre Dame. Florida State just not good this year. I mean, they're 1-2. I mean, they barely beat Jacksonville State. I shouldn't say barely. They beat them 41-24, but it was a struggle. And they lost 16-13 to Georgia Tech, and then we saw a couple weeks ago they got dominated by Miami on national TV. So what does that tell you? Florida State at Notre Dame. Notre Dame's 21-point favorite. And the fact that Notre Dame's playing in the ACC this year gives them a lot more pedigree towards the college football playoff spot. They are 2-0 right now, and they are ranked number 5. So, again, that's what's kind of on tap for today. The big games, of course, we'll talk about coming up. And, again, we'll get into my picks as well. And just once again, if you can follow me on Twitter at NickCosco59, at NickKosko59, and, of course, follow our station, AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio, on Twitter at 1490 Sports Bet. And these games are they're intriguing, but I'm not ready to say this is a great week. We're going to have great weeks when the Big Ten comes back in 2 weeks. We'll dive into that more. Also, to remind you, we are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. If you want to get in, get a great workout, if you've rolled before, if you've never rolled before, check out the great instruction from my instructor, Al Brusso. He's a former high school and college wrestling teammate of mine. He took on jiu-jitsu in college as well. So I got to tell you, it's been great. I've been training there for a month now. Come on in. You can catch me there on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So it's a great time. Check them out. Harbor Jiu-Jitsu inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Find them on Facebook and Instagram as well. All right, we're going to step aside, take a quick break, and we will welcome in Eytan Shander to the program. So keep it locked here to AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. It's College Football Pick'em.
Betting college football? You've come to the right place. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Welcome back to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Costco. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. You can follow me on Twitter at NickCosco59, NickKosko59. Follow the station at 1490 Sports Bet as well. Pleased to be joined now by one of my good buddies, Eytan Shander. You can follow him on Twitter at Shander Show. He is, I don't even know. You're all over the place. I've lost track of how many shows you do and how many columns you write every week.
Nick, listen, man, I appreciate you. Always a pleasure, man, to sit down and chat, break some bread with you over anything betting related, even in life. So appreciate you, brother, and good to see all your success as well.
I appreciate that as well. So we'll dive right into it. And I was actually talking about this in the opening monologue today. I noticed that a lot of these lines now seem to be, at least in college football, they're predicated upon these top 25 rankings as well, because you're going to get some weird spreads. I mentioned it before how, a team like, for example, let's look at Texas and Oklahoma this weekend. They're playing at noon.
Great place to start.
The way I look at it is Oklahoma is not as good this year, but they were hyped up as a preseason, college football playoff contender. Spencer Rattler, good quarterback, only a redshirt freshman, but again, it's Lincoln Riley's system. Texas, upset loss last week. Texas is only a 2-point underdog on the road. You would think Texas at this point would have been a favorite this week because they seem to be a little bit better. They seem to have more veterans within their roster. So, to me, I feel, and I also mentioned Tennessee. They're top 15 right now, and they've only beaten South Carolina, Missouri. So what sense does that make? And I think it has something to do with the Big Ten and Pac-12 not playing yet, despite the fact teams like Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon are already in the top 25. What are your thoughts on that? I feel like these rankings are going to be so random throughout the entire year, and it really is going to affect these spreads.
Yeah, and just think about this real quick. If you just look at, you're right, 100%, where we are now, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7 weeks into the season dealing with this. Imagine what it's going to be like when we have the playoffs and actually looking at teams that should be in, knowing that it's an SEC-heavy schedule at first, and then other teams are going to be infused in there. But Oklahoma is a good example. I love that example, Nick, because you're right. This is nowhere near an Oklahoma favored game, especially the way in which they've been playing defensively last couple of games. And even with Rattler, it's not like he's been terrible. They've been able to move the football down the field. He's young, and clearly turning the football over is going to kill this team, especially when they can't stop anybody. But I do recognize that point you make, which is teams that come in heavily ranked without the infusion of every single power conference now is going to get the benefit of the doubt. And again, I think we also have to factor in that this is a big rivalry game, and it's going to be sold as one. It's no longer the shootout, right? It's the showdown. But at the same time, Texas, as much as they have the right, honest right, as you and I agree on that, to come into this game as the road favorite, let's be honest, it's not like their defense is going to come in and slow down Oklahoma's offense. This is probably going to be like a 90-point game here. We'll get to the total in a second. But, yeah, I think that Oklahoma should not be favored, and that's probably doing them a service that's not warranted when you lose a couple of games following, everything that's been said about you, built up about you at the start of the season.
Yeah, Oklahoma, we know they can score. They score every year. And this kid Rattler, who I do like as a quarterback, he can sling it. Even a guy like Joel Cloud was comparing him to at least the arm strength to Patrick Mahomes when he was in college. And it's true, the kid can throw it 55 yards in the air. Yep. So it's not going to surprise me if they just score a crap ton of points every single week. But that defense is always a concern. And the fact that Texas needed overtime over Texas Tech and they lost to TCU last week. The Big 12 as a whole, and I was talking about this too, now that it seems like Texas should be the favorite for the remainder of the way to win the Big 12, I'll tell you what, if Oklahoma wins today and they both have 2 conference losses, you're looking at teams like Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and heck, Kansas State right now that are 2-0 in the conference. I wouldn't know who to pick now in the Big 12 if Oklahoma wins this football game today.
And look, that's a big if, but you're right. It's worthy of exploring at the very least, because now you have a conference in chaos. And from a betting standpoint, it's going to drive you mad, especially from any future standpoint. I would imagine you're going to get a ton of value, though, just because of how things could be pretty wide open with that Sooners victory. At the same time, you mentioned it, though. Texas giving up points, especially that disappointing loss we just see coming off of that now to TCU into this game. Oklahoma can score. Rattler can move the football down the field. I would think that this is an overplay, just looking at that hovering 72.5, 72, depending on where you are. And I don't know if that necessarily favors Oklahoma, is my point. Whereas Texas, we know, this is pretty much the same team playing against each other. It's just Oklahoma turns the football over a little more than Texas, and that's been a big difference maker. So I think that looking at this game, as much as I would love that chaotic scenario to play out, Nick, I don't know if Oklahoma can outlast Texas in what we all anticipate to be a shootout. 72.5, that almost seems low looking at it right now.
Yeah, I got that at 72 for the over/under. And again, I mean, it looks like that line shifted a little bit as well, according to some books. Oklahoma minus 2.5, but still, it's basically a pick 'em. At least to me, and Texas, obviously, I think is going to win this football game. But chaos could happen out of nowhere. Another game I wanted to get your opinion on, and I'm going to talk about it later when I do my pick segment. But I look at Miami and Clemson. That's the big game tonight. Now, again, am I picking Miami to upset Clemson tonight? No, but that line to me actually is pretty big. I think it's been a steady Clemson minus 14 the entire week. Over/under set at 62.5. Clemson, of course, they're the gold standard right now. Them and Alabama. It seems to be back to where they were when Tua, how Tua was playing pre-injury. Now they have Mac Jones at quarterback. So I look at Clemson, and usually we do this every year, right? Clemson is the dominating factor. People are like, maybe this year they fall off, or somebody's going to finally challenge them, and then they find that challenger. This year it's Miami, apparently in the ACC, or maybe until they play Notre Dame later in the year. But with Derek King at quarterback, Miami can score. They're playing good defense. Derek King's a Heisman candidate as well. I'm still surprised, even though it's at Clemson, that this line is that big. Clemson a 2-touchdown favorite. The way Miami's been playing, I'm surprised. To me, I'm going to touch this game later in my picks, but I feel like this game's going to go either way. I don't think Miami's going to win, but I do think they could probably cover this game, or we're going to get the total opposite, and Clemson's going to be like, contender, you kidding me? They're a pretender. We're gonna beat them by 35 points tonight.
There is a sense of that, isn't it? And I agree. Those are really the only two scenarios that I think will play out. Everybody is trying to, and the national pundits and the people that talk about this game for a living that do it far better than I do, they really want Miami to be back. You get that feeling, right? That you get Absolutely. That sense. And I think that plays into tonight, because on the surface, I agree with you, where you look at that 14-point line, you look at what Miami has done, especially, putting up a ton of points. Now, look, FSU is in a tailspin. That's fine, but they still pounded them just coming off that last victory into the ground. They've earned their record. They've earned their ranking. But I think what's happened is the conversation has now grown to, well, Miami is back, meaning they're not hovering on the outside like Mac Brown and UNC, most likely, these teams that are kind of that 7 through 10 range that will hover. And this is a huge test, I think, not just for Miami, but for the people and for that whole sentiment that Miami is back. You beat Clemson, you come out and you beat Clemson, upset Clemson, which I don't think anybody really believes is going to happen. That's a completely different story, right? But if you come in and you lose by 3, you lose by 9, something along those lines, and it's a noticeable cover of the spread, I think that does get brought back into this conversation. It's not like Miami is playing for loss by any means, but I do recognize that there is enough talent at the quarterback position to move the ball consistently down the field, and ideally, and that's the operative word here, brother, is keep up with Lawrence and that Clemson offense. I will say, though, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. All I was going to say was you mentioned keeping up with Trevor Lawrence. He's just absurd. If he's not the number one pick, you might where are his odds to be the number one pick? Like minus like 2.5 million at this point. He's just absolutely
just take
absurd.
Him off the board, I think, at this point, right?
I don't think it's legally allowed to make a bet on him anymore to be the number one overall pick.
So let me ask you this about the whole Clemson thing, because I think that there is a sense of, like with Dabo and Saban, more so than anybody else, there is this Belichickian sense to them, where whenever there is controversy, whenever there is something that's just away from the football team, they have this knack to kind of bounce back, especially if there's a statement made. And look, it's not controversy in a negative sense, but everybody's been hovering around this ridiculous idea that Dabo is going to now coach the Houston Texans because of Deshaun Watson.
There was talk he was going to coach the Jacksonville Jaguars a couple weeks ago. Right. They'll get the number one pick, or is he going to coach the Jets because they're going to get traded? I don't. To me,
what better way to shut everybody up than to blow Miami out, right? You blow Miami out by 20 points. I don't think anybody's talking as much about, well, after this loss, he lost to Miami. They're not going to win the championship. He'll probably bail to Houston. You beat Miami into the ground. And that's what I'm saying. Like, I think stuff like that factors into coaching, especially when you get late into a game. If you do have that 14, 17-point lead, you're not coaching just to get out of there. You might be coaching to send another message.
No doubt. And for me, at least, I believe Clemson and Dabo Swinney, especially, and of course, with Trevor Lawrence, I mean, they're looking for this is like their revenge tour. I mean, I know we use that term a lot now, but, they got destroyed by LSU in that championship game last year. LSU was, the second coming of, whatever you want to call it last year in 2019. So I think Clemson wants to get back to that elite status, or to the gold status there, and win a national title, whether it be over Alabama or anybody else after getting embarrassed last year. Just a couple more things, and you actually mentioned North Carolina. I was going to bring them up. I like North Carolina, or at least I liked them coming into the season, because I was a big fan of the quarterback, Sam Howell. And again, I'm a quarterback guy, as you know, picking all these teams. Sam Howell, great freshman season, and then I was talking about him in the monologue, and I said, his completion percentage is at 65, not bad, but in some of these college offenses, that's just not good enough. Only 3 touchdowns and 3 picks, and it's weird because they beat up on Syracuse, so to speak, on the scoreboard 31-6 earlier in the year, but they didn't look that good. And then I had Boston College last week plus 14 against North Carolina, and they covered. And I'm not sounding the alarm bells because they've won 2 games in a row. Or excuse me, they're 2-0 to start the year, and plus they're a top 10 team. And for all we know, Mac Brown could get that team rolling, and they actually get something going. But the fact that they're a 5-point favorite, I don't know where to go with that line. But the over is at 59, and I think playing Virginia Tech today, that might be a good play for the over, because Virginia Tech's averaging 40 points a game. And again, they've played NC State and Duke, so what are we really talking about here? They're playing the bottom of the ACC right now. Yeah. But I feel like if North Carolina actually gets something going, and if Virginia Tech actually has the offense they supposedly have, I mean, I feel like that's an easy overplay at 59.
Yeah, so there's one thing that concerns me. Otherwise, I think I'm with you. But I was actually listening to what you were laying out, and I thought you might actually play that under. But here's the thing. North Carolina, really good against the run. We've seen them shut teams down against the run. Virginia Tech, on the other hand, they get moving on the ground, and they've been able to be successful on the ground. I know they were dealing with a lot of issues as far as injury and guys out, obviously, because of what's happened. But I wonder if those two things counter each other. And now with guys who are normally, 2 quarterbacks who are normally not throwing the football 50, 60 times, if that may factor into it. But if you're talking about just scoring points, then I think you're right. 59 should not be difficult to get to, especially with Virginia Tech now coming to Chapel Hill. I do wonder, though, just looking at this game itself, why it's up to 5 and why this wouldn't be closer to like 3.5. I could see UNC getting a 3.5. You're going to buy that hook, obviously, just because of where they are and how well they've played. But I don't know why Virginia Tech – it seems like Virginia Tech is getting punished by 1.5 at least, if not maybe a full 2, if you wanted to look at this as a real 3-point home field, knowing, of course, things are a little different at home. But this is probably going to be a throwing game more so than anything else, because we've seen both sides really do a really good job against the run. So, yeah, I mean, if I had to choose, something in my gut would say under 59, but you made a good argument for it. So I'll give you that. You sold me on that. But I still – as big as that line is, something's off on that to me. And I would take Vatek with the 5, knowing that if it dropped and it was somewhere around 3.5 to 3, I would definitely rethink that. But it just seems a little off to me that there's that 1.5 to 2 points where Virginia Tech is being punished.
Yeah, no doubt. And again, it's not due.
And I don't know why.
It's not due to the lack of talent. Obviously, Virginia Tech, as I mentioned, is putting up 40 points a game, and so they very well go in and win this game. But North Carolina, again, has had the noted struggles for a little bit so far. So maybe this is the game where they finally air it out. I wanted to get your opinion on one more thing here. There's some good games as well. The ones I haven't mentioned, Tennessee and Georgia is one, obviously. And then I'm a huge Florida Gators guy this year. They're at Texas A&M, so that's a big one. But I wanted to get your take on, if you had to pick your 4, basically your best 4 teams right now to put in the college football playoff. To me, I'm sticking with my preseason pick, which was Clemson, Alabama, the SEC winner. Obviously, Clemson wins the ACC. Ohio State when they start play in late October, and Florida. I think 2 SEC teams are getting in, and right now it's looking like that. Or at least 2 teams are getting in just because the Big 12 might have played themselves out of it unless Oklahoma State makes a run. Other than that, and then the Pac-12. I mean, 7 games, and they don't start till November. I mean, that's like shooting craps right there. So I mean, I have no idea what the Pac-12 once again, and they've been shut out of the playoff in normal years. So to me,
Right.
I in any order, Clemson, Bama, Ohio State, and Florida, probably that order actually right there. So I mean, where are you leaning right now towards your Final Four?
I don't think there's any movement with the top 3. The only area I think you'll find movement would be with Florida, but it would probably be in the same conference with Georgia.
Right.
And that would probably be the determining factor. Right down to, and look, who knows if they could beat Bama. That's in Alabama. Good luck. But hosting Florida is huge down the line. And that might be the determining game, right, in which we look and see if now Florida finishes ahead of Georgia with that victory head-to-head, that's going to, I think, put them up. But I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be anybody else outside of the SEC. You're going to get that layout where that's just what we get nowadays. And if anybody doesn't like it, and if people are upset about it, then expand the playoffs. But there's no realistic argument that will be made for a Pac-12 team to come into this postseason ahead of the winner of Florida or Georgia. So I would look at that game and pretty much say whoever wins that, assuming that Georgia doesn't go in and win. Now, again, let me throw this back. Georgia beats Alabama, loses to Florida. Does that automatically, and I know you're biased, but does that automatically put Florida in there? Because Florida won't have to play Bama.
You're saying if Georgia loses or beats Alabama but loses to Florida, now does that put all Florida automatically in there? I think it
they
could.
both finish with 1 loss.
If they all finish with one loss, so where's Florida's loss there? Would they lose to? You're just saying anywhere really?
Maybe they lose at the end of the year to Tennessee, which probably is going to happen. But look, they've got the only real loss that could probably happen at this point would be Texas A&M. And then you look at Georgia. I don't see them losing to LSU.
No, that's why. They were one of my preseason picks going back dating towards the summer. So again, I'm a huge fan of Florida this year. Now, if they all have
one against A&M, I don't think it's going to be.
Don't get me wrong. It will be tough. But is Jimbo Fisher going to get up for a big game since his days at Florida State? Is my question. But
probably not.
If they all have 1 loss, it's going to be close. I don't see how you could put. At that point, unless the Big 12 totally implodes, I don't see how you could put 2 SEC teams in if everybody has 1 loss. Hypothetically, in that scenario, let's just say Bama's only loss is to Georgia, right? But then at that point, Bama still makes the conference title game.
Yep.
Florida has 1 loss going in. Let's say but they still get in on tiebreaker merits, or they beat Georgia head-to-head. So you have
they beat Georgia.
At that point, you have Florida and Bama title game. Both have 1 loss. One of them's going to have 2 losses. So now the winner gets in. Clemson's going to get in, obviously, in my opinion. And then I would say Ohio State's going to run the table as well. They'll finish 9-0, but they're too good to leave out, obviously, so they're going to get in.
Now do you put Georgia because they had the 1 loss but didn't even play in the conference championship?
Now you're in that situation where we had a couple
State,
years ago.
Do you think they're going to be good enough? They're going to lose to Ohio State.
If you're talking about a Bama 1-loss championship team, Florida 2 losses out, right? But Georgia's only loss is to Florida. Does that weigh against them, or it's like our only losses to Georgia? We already beat Alabama, the SEC champions.
Yeah, so that's right. Does it outweigh the fact that they lost to Florida?
Right, that could outweigh it. My point is now you have to look at, all right, can the is Oregon, for example, going to be that dominant over 7 games, 6 regular season games, and then a 7th game in the title game? Are they going to be that dominant? No. I don't think so. Now you look at the Big 12. Is Oklahoma State undefeated, or is Iowa State undefeated? Kansas State's not one of the Big 12, but is Oklahoma State undefeated? And if that's the case, does that outweigh a 1-loss Georgia team? I think at that point, if you're undefeated conference champ, it does. But again, I don't think the Big 12 is going to have an undefeated champion this year. So I think in that scenario, you still could get 2 teams in. Georgia 1 loss, they sneak in without even playing the conference title game. We saw that happen to Alabama 1 year, and then you go back a couple of years ago in the Big Ten, Penn State won the conference with 2 losses, but Ohio State still got in, even though they lost to Penn State. That was their only loss, and they got in.
That's true. No, it's going to be a crazy scenario, man. Especially when you look at that. If in fact that goes to the championship game, Florida beats Alabama, then you've got even more chaos. So good luck.
No doubt. All right, that is Eytan Shander. Big thanks to him joining us. You can follow him on Twitter at Shander Show. Of course, follow our station at 1490 SportsBet. Check out all his work, Fox Sports Bet Radio, SportsMap. You're on our station. You have a calm Philly voice.
I mean, every day here.
You are all over the place. I can't go a day without scrolling through Twitter and finding your content somewhere.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. And, again, all the best to you, and I'm happy to see your success continue to grow, bro.
I appreciate it. All right, thank you very much. That's Eytan Shander. Be sure to check him out. Of course, follow him on Twitter at Shander Show. We'll take a quick break on the other side. Nick's picks. We're going to do a rapid-fire section here today. 5-8-2 on the year. Not good after a 1-4 week last week. We're going to try to get a 5-0 week for the first time in a couple
don't listen
years.
to me, for goodness sakes.
We're going to try to get that. All right, we'll be back. College football pick 'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Now back to College Football Pick'em with Nick Costco, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.
Welcome back to College Football Pick'em right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio. I'm your host, Nick Costco. We are presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu, located inside the Attila's Gym in Egg Harbor Township. Final segment of the show, Nick's picks right here, 5-8-2 on the year, 1-4 last week. Oh, that is god-awful. My goodness gracious, we are under 500, folks. Under 500 for the second time in 3 weeks. We were 2-3 after 1 week. We were basically we split even. We were 4-4-2 after last week, and now we're 5-8-2. That is unbelievable. I say we as in the royal we. That's me. So, but as I always say, I can always make you money. Either you listen to me and you get my picks right, or you don't listen to me and you do the opposite and you win money anyway. So I'm in the clear, actually. So you don't have to please don't blame me if you end up losing anything. Big thanks to Eytan Shander for joining the program as well, giving his insight to the college football landscape and, of course, his thoughts on the Week 6 slate today. You can follow me on Twitter at NickCostco59. NickKosko59, and be sure to follow our station, 1490 Sports Betting Radio, at 1490 Sports Bet on Twitter. Of course, follow our other hosts on the show as well as Eytan, who's at Shander Show. You can follow Rich Quinones at RichQ1Q, and our guy, Ryan Rothstein, as well, at Wise Rye, among many others. Very, very good station that is growing, very young, but we are young and hungry, as they say. All right, let's dive into these games here today. Duke and Syracuse, and I teased a lot of these to start the show, but Duke and Syracuse again. Duke's winless. Syracuse has played tough so far. Again, the way they played, I know they lost 31-6, but I still think they played UNC relatively well, and the scoreboard kind of got away from them. They played Pittsburgh well, and they beat Georgia Tech. I just don't think Duke can get out of their own way. So the fact that Syracuse was plus 2.5, and I teased this at the beginning of the show, with that line, it's basically a pick 'em just because it's less than a field goal. I mean, of course, we've seen the 2-point and 1-point games, and you really get screwed. But with Syracuse at plus 2.5, the fact that they're at home, I know Duke's hungry and they're searching for their first win, but I just like the orange. I like the orange. Are they called the Orange Men anymore? I mean, I like the Orange Men, the orange. I like Syracuse in this one, plus 2.5 moving forward. Hopefully that's our first victory of the day. Texas at Oklahoma, the Red River shootout. I don't care. Again, they're changing names left and right of all these things. But Texas at Oklahoma, again, another one of these games I teased before. Oklahoma, they should have been. I mean, I thought they should have been a home underdogs this week, but Texas got the +2 on the road. So Sam Ehlinger, Spencer Rattler, where do you go? Both quarterbacks can really light it up on the scoreboard. Both offenses know what they're doing. Just the way Oklahoma's played this year so far against not subpar competition, but competition that these teams are not as good as Texas in my mind in Kansas State and Iowa State back in the rankings. But Kansas State, I mean, they lost to Arkansas State, but they managed to beat Oklahoma. They just have Oklahoma's number. And for a team like Texas, a team like TCU just has their number for some reason. 6 of 8 meetings. Tom Herman can't beat Gary Patterson. I don't get it. He can't do it. So, but again, I'm leaning towards Texas today. Again, +2. It's a pick 'em almost. So And I think they're going to win. I think they're going to win outright. If they were, +5 on the road, I would still pick them. I think they would still cover. I think it's going to be a close one. It'll be a close game today, but I really believe the Longhorns are going to win this game outright. They're going to reestablish themselves as the top of the Big 12 this year. Oklahoma, it's unfathomable to think that they would actually lose 3 straight conference games, drop to 1-3 on the year, and then had really no shot, almost no shot of getting back into the rankings. They very well could. But, for a Lincoln Riley coach team, particularly after what we've seen over the last 3 years, this team making the playoffs with 3 different quarterbacks, again, veteran quarterbacks, not a redshirt freshman, homegrown kid. But it's almost unthinkable to think they would lose 3 games in a row. But here we are, folks, and it's the year of 2020, so crazy things are going to happen. So I know all that logic probably just means I'm going to pick Oklahoma, but I'm picking Texas. Hook 'em, horns up, not horns down today. Hook 'em for Texas, +2 on the road at Oklahoma. Florida at Texas A&M, another big one. But again, Texas A&M. Top 25 team, Jimbo Fisher. This is the year where Jimbo Fisher needs this team to start getting rolling and really make some noise in the SEC. Isaiah Spiller's their great running back. Is Kellen Mond going to be able to do it and keep up with Kyle Trask in the Florida offense? I really don't think so. I'm shocked this game is not leaning towards Florida even more. The fact that they are just under a touchdown favorite on the road. I hate taking big road favorites. You know this, folks. You know this over the last 3 shows. You know I am not a huge fan of taking these big road favorites, but the fact that they're less than a touchdown, that over-run is 58, by the way. I feel like that's going to go over, just based on Florida's offense. And you look at Florida scored 51 points to start the year against Ole Miss, and they scored 38. And decent performance against South Carolina. I think they put it all together. And the defense actually steps up, which it looked a little bit more improved against South Carolina. But again, that's South Carolina. What are they going to do against a better offense in Texas A&M? Which means that overplay is probably coming. But going back to the touchdown, them being just under a touchdown favorite, -6.5. I think Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts, the quarterback and tight end for Florida, just too good. They are just too good. Trask has 10 touchdowns this year, leads the SEC through 2 games. Pitts has 6 of those. Kyle Pitts, the tight end, has 6 of them. I'll tell you what, if he's in double-digit touchdowns within the next week or two, he's going to be in the top 5 in terms of the Heisman conversation. He is so good right now. Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, leading the way for the Florida Gators offense. If Texas A&M can play ball control with Isaiah Spiller, only on 19 carries this year, he's got 142 yards. And Texas A&M's got some offensive players on that side. They have some good ones, but is Kellen Mond going to keep up with Kyle Trask? In my opinion, I don't think so. 507 yards this year. He's completing under 60% of his passes. 4 touchdowns this year, 1 pick. He's not as prolific as Trask right now, so just give me Florida -6.5 on the road. That is game number 3. Game number 4, NC State at Virginia. Now, I told Rich this one earlier in the week. He was a little surprised that I was going to go with NC State. Just by the way, I was talking about Virginia, but NC State +9.5 on the road. That is a huge spread right there. And I don't think Virginia. Again, they played Clemson, relatively well, I guess, but NC State, that's just too big. Do I really feel like Virginia is going to win by double digits today? I don't think so. So where's this line coming from? I have no idea, to be honest with you. NC State, 2-1 on the year, and Virginia is 1-1. I look at Virginia's schedule, 38 points against Duke, 23 against Clemson, lost by 18. They were within 20. All right, that's almost a win for a lot of these teams against Clemson. For NC State, only loss was to Virginia Tech, lost 45-24, but they edged out Wake Forest by 3 points, 45-42, and they edged out previously number 24 Pitt, 30-29 in their last game to go 2-1. So the fact that they did that on the road gives me hope for NC State, and I'm surprised because they beat Pitt, and Pitt's a respected team this year. That's why I'm surprised at this line is as big as it is. So give me NC State +9.5 on the road at Virginia. And finally, Miami at Clemson tonight, the big game of the evening. I'll tell you what, this is what we all have been waiting for 2 weeks. Miami's had 2 weeks to prepare for this football game. They're both 3-0. Clemson is the big bad boys of the ACC, constantly in the college football playoff. It's Dabo Swinney, it's Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne. Good luck stopping them. 37-13, 49-0, 41-23. Clemson's put up over 40 points a game. Well, guess what? Miami is a darn good football team as well. Miami 3-0 as well. They beat UAB. All right, it's their first game with the whole new system under offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley and quarterback Derek King. That's fine. 31-14. At Louisville, primetime game, 47-34. Game was not as close as the score indicated, and they just went out and destroyed Florida State, a down Florida State team, but 52-10. They took care of business, and I'm still surprised. Again, it's because it's Clemson. That's why Miami is a 2-touchdown dog in this one on the road. And as I mentioned with Eytan just in the last segment, this game is either going to be Miami's going to cover this one really close, or Clemson's going to end up winning this game by 20 to 30, or basically 28 to 30 points tonight. It's going to be one of those two. I don't see Miami winning the football game, although I think college football would love that. I know everybody wants to see Clemson succeed again, maybe a Clemson-Bama rematch again, but people want, as Eytan alluded to, people want the U to be back. I don't think they're going to win tonight. It would be great for college football. It really caused a lot of chaos, but I do believe they are going to cover. They are plus 14 on the road tonight. I just think Miami's going to get it done. They will cover this one, and they're going to win you some money tonight. Derek King, I think, will have a good game. It's going to be a nice quarterback battle between King and Lawrence, two Heisman contenders on display through, we're about almost to midway October. So this is a great primetime matchup. Game day is going to be there. It's a Fowler and Herb Street special. I'm looking forward to this one tonight. All right, that's going to do it for me on college football pick'em. Big thanks to Eytan Shander for joining me in the middle of the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Shander Show. Be sure to follow our Twitter page for AM 1490 on Twitter at 1490 SportsBet. Follow my guys Rich Quinones and Ryan Rothstein at RichQ1Q and at WiseRye on Twitter as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Nick Costco59. We will see you next week, folks, and hopefully we have a 5-0 week. Go out and win some money today. It's another great day for college football here on this fall Saturday. It's College Football Pick'em, presented by Harbor Jiu-Jitsu right here on AM 1490 Sports Betting Radio.